let them run that gauntlet.
That's a good guy.
Calling it back to order.
Could this
The five,
possibly be mine?
yes, it could,
Thank you.
because I don't have mine out here. 5F, and that's the approval of recommendation and funding for the Yellow Brick Road to Vision 2020 reorganization model. And I hope that everybody did have an opportunity to review this. So I'll just I'll start with Doug and see if you have any questions or comments on this.
No, I'm completely in favor of this item. I have even my personal ideas on what the salary should be for the transition. I will make this one statement. This is a reorganization initiative. So I think we're in perfect order of making the recommendations for transition for those employees that are called out here. I don't think we need to wait for anything else other than this meeting today. The only thing that I would add is we may want to call the appointment of the new district manager as an interim to be effective at the time that an actual transition plan is determined, which would be the work either with Severn Trent to either transition services from their district manager over to ours.
And I'm going to ask, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, yeah, I'm done.
I'm going to ask Tony to comment on that, because he and I did have some discussions a little bit earlier on this, and he brought up an item I did not think about.
Yeah, and Mr. Banks' comment ties into part of the conversation I had with Mrs. Feinberg with regards to we have a current district management services agreement where we define, Severn Trent is defined as being the district manager. And I don't think you can legally have two district managers, so the idea of having, I'll call an interim, would have to be a small d, small m manager until such time as we modify the agreement with Severn Trent to remove them as the district manager and to have the appropriate compensation adjustments.
Who's technically our district manager now?
I think the acting district manager is Mr. Stephen.
Stephen, are you?
Stephen, yeah. Or Mr. Conkar.
Bob, the active district manager?
Yes.
That's,
Yes, and so and once again, I think because part of that contract is they are the district manager, we need to remove them as being the district manager and also adjust the compensation to them under the agreement.
change your effective date.
I'll just wait till you get done. I got a totally different way of doing it.
No, go ahead.
Bill,
Oh.
I'll move to you. Any questions,
Thank-
comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all,
Unless they agree to it.
most of you have heard me complain on many occasions about the organization or lack thereof that we've been operating under for the last now 6 years, and the fact that we are now on our 5th operations manager. And I feel that the work that has been done and is presented this afternoon is a huge, huge, huge step forward, and I want to congratulate and indicate that I think that we're finally getting on the correct direction. Having said that, I have 2 questions. And probably the most important one is the one that's labeled number 1, not the bringing of the district manager position in-house, but promoting Chris to district manager. If I had been doing this all by myself, I probably would have had April as a business manager and Chris as the utilities manager, and gone out and advertised for a new district manager, hoping that there was a Superman out there that could fly us to the moon. And so I'm sure that that was discussed Margaret. But I'd like for you to, if you could, just make me a little more comfortable with why you want to go this way. Chris and April are both doing fine jobs
Right.
in the ones they're in, and taking Chris out from utilities, which is hugely important, and moving him is one that I would only do under duress, so please help me.
And, and I do understand, and we did discuss many of these things that, as you're talking about, there was a lot of discussions about this. And remember too, that during the transition period, and while we're looking for a public works manager and a utilities manager, those responsibilities are still going to be split between Chris and April. That, you know, at least till we find those other two positions, the work of these 4 positions are gonna be split between these 2 people. So Chris is well aware of that, and with the background that he has, he actually is, in the discussions, and I think Chris would even agree to this, he's the right person to move this forward.
I'm hoping he finds someone just like himself. Maybe even better.
He's got contacts, and he's got the experience to fill this position.
You want to ask Chris that direct?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be happy to
You want
respond.
to get to Chris?
I will in a minute, but I'd like for the other
Move on
2
now.
board members to have a chance for their questions before.
Okay.
The only thing I find missing is the probationary period for these people. There doesn't seem to be anything in here about probationary period.
There wouldn't be.
We're at will. At will
Because-
hiring.
All right, I just thought that should be,
Now, for clarification, number 2, for my position, because I've been here since February, we requested waiving of the probationary period, and then Chris is just a promotion.
but for the new, okay. And when you authorize the manager to negotiate modifications, that would come to the board for, again? We authorize you to modify, that still would come to the board, so we
To
would know.
modify what?
To modify, the negotiations with Southern Trent if there was a modification.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we don't have authority to contract on behalf of the district. And relative to the other 2 positions, the probationary, it would be per policy, which is the 90 days.
And the only thing I was questioning the salary range, but I did do an investigation for like 3 days of salary ranges of these positions in the United States, so I'm okay with the salary range.
The ranges are a little low, but we can always,
We can always go up.
yeah.
Real tough to go down.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
And remember that what the board did was, we had requested that part of what Joe DeServo did was that he came up with the, you know, with April, the job descriptions, and he set the salary ranges, and he did that very methodically.
And it's a good baseline.
He was doing
He did
that
it
based
very
on Florida
methodically.
too,
Yeah,
so.
it's a good baseline.
I think it's a good baseline.
And I think both of these would come in at the midpoint, in my opinion.
But the median that I found was within that salary
Yeah,
range
yeah,
in the
yeah,
United States.
you're right.
Ed.
Buckle your seatbelts. Item number 3, I read this first time and I didn't understand it, but then I had a meeting with Chris and he let me know that's basically Terry's position. I guess the issue is we've got an age situation, that we've got a retirement potentially coming in 3 to 5 years. He's got a knowledge that we cannot live without. If we have issues that are HR related, then let's address those separately. But I guess I don't understand why it's even in the conversation for this position. Alls we're doing is, to me, it's not a part of this first organizational change.
The only reason it is for the funding consideration.
For the what?
For the funding consideration. If you take that position part-time, then you take the other.
Well, here's the problem, you get into that.
Let
It-
me address that, because it may help you understand. It goes beyond just the funding, that is part of it, but it also is what's best for Terry.
Well, you got some HR rules, at least you had them up north, and I'm assuming they're the same down here. If an employee is not maintaining 32 hours work, he's not on the insurance. So now I'm assuming that the insurance down here is the same.
I'm gonna let April
Can I make a
address
comment
this.
here?
Yeah.
Because this is going to get, my problem with all this was I don't think that his deal
This item
this is not
is
the
not
the
core
issue.
to- yeah.
Yeah, it's not the issue.
Okay, so April White, your operations manager. So the reason why that is in here is because we are currently working on a reorganization structure. Part of that reorganization is finding the funding, but this is also an issue that we have, and you are right. This is a very sensitive issue. So I don't want to elaborate a whole lot in this particular setting because I think it's inappropriate to call out any particular employee and discuss those specific issues. But this is an important issue that moving into a reorganization, as you try to establish culture and set policies and lead your organization into complying with policy, part of this employee issue is non-compliant with policy. We're talking about a 27-year veteran that probably can significantly be penned with running the operations of this district since its inception. And so we are trying to, through this mechanism, to not kick this can further down the road, to capitalize on this opportunity of reorganizing, to create a position that will help transition this employee to where we benefit as a district from that institutional knowledge that he has to offer, and also provide a mechanism of appropriate savings that we can immediately apply to this reorganization cost and transition this employee that has dedicated 27 years of his career to this district. So we felt that it was an appropriate time to bring this to the supervisors to make sure that we have a plan moving forward with this particular employee.
Well,
But I think
I
Ed, your
did,
question.
the deal I did is I did my own financial deal, and I came up with about an $81,000 shortfall. And I see what we're doing is that to some extent, it
Offset
is,
that.
to some extent, that offset it a little bit. The other extent is that it's what you elected for those three positions is going to be the salary. You guys may have gone lower, I went higher, it doesn't make any difference. But to me, that issue of that position is, we got to have it for the next years to be able to get this thing. That new guy coming in the utilities, the new guy coming in Public Works, going to need him badly
And I think that's true.
to
But
get
the one
up to
question
speed.
I have
So
is
I just
around
wanted
the-
that off the side.
Is there any impacts to this employee if that person goes to a part-time rate? Does it, I mean, that, because
I
hadn't
think
thought
you
about
got
it,
in
honestly,
part-time
I
on
hadn't thought about
insurance.
impact to insurance and.
So we thought this process, by creating a position, would be the easiest route, because what we don't want to do is go in and revise our policy. Our policy is that our part-time employees do not receive benefits. So what we are asking here is for us to craft a customized agreement, which is going to sunset. It is, and so by bringing him on in this new position as a temporary part-time position, that agreement would have to be brought back to the board to see what we can work out. By doing that, it sunsets in that 3-year maximum period, and that position just goes away. There's no policy change. We're not affecting our other part-time employees. We're creating a temporary part-time
Specialty.
Just
position.
make sure that the insurance is not compromised, is my point. That's
It's
an
almost
issue.
like a consultant role.
It's a very.
We would-
Right, we'd be creating an agreement
We'd
with
almost be
benefits.
better off converting it, but,
Go,
converting it to a contractor consultant position with benefits. I don't know if we can do that, but.
I don't think-
That puts a liability on him as a contractor, which he's
And
not
I'm
going to
fine.
be
I
able to
just- I
do.
just wanted to make sure we were kind of.
So I thought this was the
100%.
easiest path and the best time to make sure that new management is dealing with this very critical issue that we have to deal with.
I suggested this a couple of months ago, and I know, I think Chris and April have been talking. There's 5 pages of items attached to severance agreement identified as Exhibit B of their duties and responsibilities. we need to sit down and probably break those down into 3 categories. Category 1 is the financial, and at this point in time, I would be opposed to doing anything that would change our current relationship with Severn Trent on the financial. Stephen, take that as a compliment. You're the best that I've seen doing it, and at the workshop, your assistant was pretty damn good, too. So I'd leave that financial. I don't think we're ready to take that bite of the apple. But I do think that we could take the remaining things that are in the operations manager and transfer those over right now immediately and effective right now, and do that by an amendment to the contract with Severn Trent. The third item is the tough one, and that's taking all the other things that are currently management items that they're doing and determining what of those items that we can do and what of those items that we just aren't ready to take that step to do yet. And that's the unknown. In other words, what are the management items that are in their agreement? I think it's on the second and third pages. And I mean, there's just bullet point after bullet point of things that we can do. Keeping in mind, we might be able to do quite a few of them. But we've got coming up in the next 4 months, we're biting into a big apple on that Lake Bank project. And that unless and until we can get that utility person in and the public works person to help, these two are going to be busy as a one-armed paper hanger. We don't need to take any more on than we can get. So my recommendation would be they sit down with Bob and determine what we can do, what they can do, and then have them translate that back. The portion of the contract that's the operations manager, their contract's in 2 parts if you haven't read the agreement. That part go away. That's done. It's easy. It's that $120,000 that we pay $10,000 a month for the other services that we need to differentiate. To what extent that's financial, to what extent that's management, I have no clue, and I'm sure they'll have to tell us. But make a contract amendment to make that happen. And that needs to be done quickly. The next item I had was, and again, some of these are picking things, but I read this thing closely, and I've been looking at it for months because I am 100% behind this. And as I told Chris the other day, this is under district management position, and assuming that that motion is made and seconded and approved, that he would be the district manager. Annual performance evaluation of district employees. No way. The district manager needs to be evaluating all the employees like he needs a hole in his head. He does the 3 management position, key staff underneath him. They do the employees underneath them. And he ain't got time for that.
Go ahead and finish.
That's it, on that. I still got more to go, but that's on that issue.
So part of the job, I don't need those to look to. Part of the job description, to clarify, the job descriptions were crafted by looking at each bullet in the ST contract and that exhibit and picking out what management can do versus what ST is doing. There's not a bullet on there that I'm not aware of exactly what those things are. And so we have no intentions of disrupting what Stephen is doing or what accounts payable is doing over there. Some of our meetings and agendas and stuff of that nature. Some of the retention responsibilities as far as our documentation, things like that we can pull in because we've already kind of been acquiring our documentation here. So we understand all of those individual bullets, and we can work with ST on that, and I believe that's number 7.
If somebody has taken that 5 pages and each one of those bullet points, and that's exactly what it is bullet points, and highlighted those that are going to come over, or highlight the ones that are going to stay, either or,
We did that.
we're 90% home.
We did that.
If we've done that, then we can turn it over to Severn Trent and say, okay, what is your cost on the $120,000 that needs to remain to do those duties? Then the rest, along with the $105,000, goes on that carryover column.
Right. And as far as clarification on evaluations, the direct reports of the district manager, he would be responsible for performing those. But the district manager would ultimately be responsible to assure that the entire program of performance management is being conducted. Not that he's doing those individual
I
ones.
just don't see he has the need to be doing the interviews and the reviews himself.
No,
the 3
just
key
for his
people.
direct
It
reports.
just means he's totally responsible. his staff would facilitate everything underneath them. So it would just trickle up. He just has overall responsibility of the performance
Right.
plan.
And then, based upon that, before I make a motion, question for Bob. Bob, are you guys up to speed then to the, I hate to use the word, the residue, the à la carte items that are going to stay in with you in both the management and the financial side, that we can amend this contract quickly?
Bob Concar, Severn Trent. Well, we really haven't been presented with that information. I know there's been a lot of discussion, but we just received the report a couple days ago. But we did have a chat with April and with Chris about it yesterday. But we have not sat down to go over the specific duties and responsibilities outlined in the contract yet.
And that
What-
would be the next step.
What would be, took the words out of my mouth, what's the timeline to get that back? Because that's going to impact the motion that I make. We looking a week, 2 weeks?
Well, I would like to start the discussion with the chairperson next week, if she's available.
And absolutely, I am. Tony and I did talk about this. We were hoping that we would bring this back to the first meeting in January.
Bring what back? The amended contract?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
because the nice part is that the the exhibits to the agreement outlining the various scopes are in a Word format. And so I think that's what the chairman and April did, took that and then placed it into various categories for their various jobs. So it's a relatively easy task.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever's, the residual, as you call it, or
Yeah,
not the residual, or the
residue,
discrete,
residue.
I'll call it
So
discrete
we-
tasks.
Yeah.
How's that?
Well, my thought is that if that's the case, then would it be appropriate that the motion would indicate that we would immediately make Chris the district manager, immediately remove or move April over to the business position, away from Severn Trent and on our payroll, and a contract amendment would be presented for ST at our first meeting in January?
Yeah, I would probably, to Tony's point, I would say.
And to
that-
make all this effective that date?
Yeah, well, I would say April's position can transition
I don't see why,
immediately.
nothing
But-
holds that
But
up.
with Chris's, it would be effective at the time that the agreement is made.
Well,
So
April's-
it's basically effective,
This says
April.
December 16th for Chris.
Yeah, but it
Right.
can't be because.
Why not?
April's
You
does,
can't have two district managers
you
unless,
can't- Tony says you can't have in name two district managers unless.
well, then we just
Capital
call
D
it,
and a
act-
small d.
I just call it active.
yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that because we got in the middle of the month, and the contract is on a monthly basis, we could make it effective January 1,
Yeah.
such that it doesn't bust up, because your payment on your contract is $105,000, and I'm assuming we're paying that 105 divided by 12.
Well, and you could just make it effective on when the contract transitions, when the amendment, at that meeting.
It's only 4 more days later, so it's January 5th.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Then maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Just make it all effective January 5th, pending receipt back in negotiations with Severn Trent, that we all agree specifically on revising, and really all I think it is a revising that Exhibit B to state what the new things are. The
And
operation
compen-
manager comes out.
And the compensation that,
And the compensation, yes.
And
yeah.
I just have something for
Right.
Bob. So Bob, is it your position in Severn Trent that you would help support us in this transition period?
Yes, we would, and the chairperson and I already talked about this. We certainly will help you, and we'll work with you on the transition.
Margaret.
And we just need some specifics. We still have some questions about funding. We have some questions about other things, and we want to get those worked out.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure, it's always easier when you got your management company behind you when you make this type of transition, because it
We've
is.
got him standing right there talking to
Yeah,
him.
so great, thank you, Bob, we appreciate it.
Okay.
I would like to ask Tony, if we did this as 3 separate motions, can we absolutely bring April on as the financial manager effective immediately?
Business manager,
The business manager. sorry.
administration manager, whatever you call it, what the position is.
Business
Well, within,
manager.
effective immediately,
Here
you
we go.
really have to look at what the pay cycle is and when the.
That's why I said we go back to the end of the
Okay.
year,
So-
so. That's why.
yes, as a district employee, yes.
So
Yes.
what's the best way to proceed with that?
Do you
Well-
want us to wait until then?
Well, as to April being the
January
business
5th?
manager? I
No,
think
we
you-
need to vote
You
today
can
to make
create
it
that,
effective.
you can create that today.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, the only
I don't
issue
think
is that the, I don't know what the contract, I'm assuming that
Well,
the
why don't we
contract
ask
on the
Bob?
105 is just divided by 12. I hate to screw stuff up
Let's
by
ask
waiting
Bob,
2
how can
weeks.
How can we make this transition? How does it work for Severn Trent to get April into our district umbrella?
That's what I'm going to do.
Well, her position is part of our overall management contract. And so, to me, the best way to do it is we sit down, go through all the issues on the contract, and bring back a recommendation at the next meeting.
So we-
And that way you do it all at one time.
So we can approve.
Because the
these items
contract
and
can
make it
be-
effective January 1 at the time that this contract is revised and executed.
Yeah, except just one item, not to throw another wrinkle into it, but back in June or July when it was discussed about April coming on board in-house and the operations manager, there was a draft of an amendment to the Severn Trent agreement that removed that operations manager component and also adjusted the compensation schedule
So we
to
need to rescind
take care of that. No, that was never adopted,
Okay.
but once again, that,
But that's the easy part, because that's in the contract and it comes out easy.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
the part that stays with them in splitting
Yeah.
our part and their part. We don't know what that number is. But
That's
can
okay.
we take and make the motion effective January 1 if we don't meet to actually approve it January 5th?
no, well, I
How do
guess,
we do that?
are we talking, which component, the April component?
All
or
of it.
the-
all of it.
All of it.
Well, without having the substantive terms of the
Kind of hard.
You really can't do that. Now, if you wanted to just do the operations manager part coming out and.
That may be
and
what we
that
have to
today.
do.
I have a form of what we did in June. I can make copies, we can circulate it, and you can look at it now and make a decision on that part.
Then,
That was a relatively simple amendment. It struck operations manager, it struck the compensation for operations manager. And if Severn Trent's agreeable, that can become effective immediately.
but to facilitate the billing, can we make it effective December 31st at midnight, such that are you billing us monthly on that?
Yes, we take the bill and we just
Why do we
divide it
want to
by
get into a
12.
proration
Well,
for
and
2
also
weeks?
I'm thinking about for, like a 1099.
Yeah,
Or
that-
a-
yeah, more
or a
paper,
W-2.
for us,
Yeah.
yeah. That's good.
That makes sense.
So I would make the motion then that we move April over to whatever we're calling that admin position.
Business manager.
Business manager, is that what it's called? Effective midnight, 12/31. And then relative to the district manager position, that being discussed at the meeting on January 5th, pending a contract amendment format from Severn, revised contract amendment for the split in the duties of the management portion of it.
Without complicating, would you want to include in the motion the removal of the operations manager from the Severn Trent contract?
Yes.
Effective today, if Severn Trent's agreeable to it?
Well, we want to do that effective
We want to try to avoid having.
January 1st.
Yeah, that January
There's
1st
1099,
also.
make that January
Okay.
There's several more components to this. Why don't we just approve the recommendation of the transition, the Road Division 2020 reorganization model, which includes all these items with the amendment or with the rider that the district manager position would be effective upon the completion of the revision of the Severn Trent contract, because that includes all of our items.
I agree with that. I can
And
agree with
then,
that.
then you just need to stipulate what the salary range is.
Well, I'm,
We have to keep out
I would also suggest there may be a second motion,
To remove the,
operations manager from the agreement, and authorize the chairman to execute an agreement in a substantially final form, and I can outline the format.
so we'll do that one second. after
Yeah,
we pass
that
it.
sounds fine.
Well, if the action requested is actually items 1 through 8. So
Yes.
with just the change of the date, we can get that far.
yeah, you've got to separate them up is what we're saying, I guess. Just, you've surprised me because I wasn't aware that you had gone so far that you had sat down and enumerated the things, you and April and Chris have enumerated out the things that we're going to keep here on the management side. So that allows us to get that to Bob real quick
Well,
like.
we need
to put a price on it.
Because
negotiate
there's,
with them, but,
and
yeah.
again, part of this whole thing is the approval, unless we gotta separate these out, the approval to authorize the backfill the utility position, authorize the public works position for Chris to, open those up and begin working on it. So there's a full suite of components here.
But what my point is which comes first, the chicken or the egg here? We can't have Chris, from what Tony's saying, we can't have Chris in that position by name.
No, but he can,
But what we can do is we can add comma acting,
yeah, interim acting.
interim acting to start doing these things.
Small
We-
d, small m, yeah.
Yeah, the big thing is we can't do is we cannot wait because we got to get these people on board.
Yes, sir.
That, what I'm just gonna make the suggestion that if we just change the dates in this to position effective January
January 1.
1 on both the positions, then we're set for January 5th to actually do all this. Yes, April?
I think sometimes during these conversations, we forget about the human aspect. That if you defer my transition to the district, we have an organization that is waiting to see what the supervisors are doing tonight. So by moving my position to an effective date that's down the road, I would rather you withdraw me from the process of negotiating with ST. ST is my employer. Bob Conkar is my boss. I report to him. I don't want to negotiate a contract on behalf of the district on ST's payroll.
So hers has to be effective
Tomorrow.
and the district manager, January 1.
Oh, you're just going to get two 1099s then.
So let's,
Well, and
They
part of the
can
problem
prorate a payment, whether they're prorating it by month or prorating it by day, whatever. That's not beyond the scope of their abilities.
And then the second piece would be, the second motion, if we talk about that, removing the operations manager from the ST contract, that would be a motion to authorize, we get to that point, Chairman, to have that effective today, and that amendment to be finalized and effective as of today or tomorrow.
Well, her duties under the contract are very well defined, so that's easy to do. That's easy to do.
Okay.
And we know the dollar value. What we don't have then, is if we're gonna make that effective tonight or tomorrow, is then we next have to include in that a salary.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Kathy?
Okay, question. Don't we have to take the operations manager out of Seven Trent first?
That's what we're saying.
Or simultaneous,
You wanted
yes.
to do it second. Doesn't that motion have to be first? Technically, that motion should be first.
No,
be-
because it's a position as opposed to, right now, it can be second.
Okay.
I'm
I thought
comfortable with
it-
it being second.
Well, let's start there.
Well, the dollar value
Because we
doesn't
can
have to
do
be
that.
done right with the first motion. We can do that
Right.
next.
Well, I would say let's include it in.
Just give us a number for pay. You're gonna go halfway, you're gonna go to the top, and halfway to the bottom.
So where are you going?
I was thinking.
No, it should be this. That's what Chris is going to say, she's in that role. And get her experience, brings her
What-
back midpoint, and it's about this.
That doesn't leave us much.
Doesn't matter.
Mm.
Don't worry about what the upward.
Don't worry about that.
We've got to
You wanna
determine-
Don't worry about that.
Which is this is
70,
form of it.
72,
How about seven?
The opposite.
In the dollar amount.
I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think that's what they're heading. Okay. I think. You may want to clarify
Well,
that,
what
Bob.
we need to know is we need to know what is she making right now.
Just commensurate to that level of position.
I think
But remember,
position tonight. And this is the agreement from the back one. Gets her on the record, and then bails out the 120, okay? She packs it off. This is what-
When you did this budget, April, what were the numbers, and I'm assuming you did the budget that came up with that 58,000? Not mine came up with 81,000. What were the numbers you used for the positions?
yes.
The salaries or the overall budget? The overall budget is a loaded number of benefits and salaries.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we've got to have it's gotta be both, because both of them impact the dollar value.
Yes,
So
both.
my question is, what is the salary and what are the benefits when added?
The number used was 72,
For all three positions?
all three of the manager positions.
Mr. Banks, Ms. Feinberg, Ms. Clarity, all conversations have to be on the record, I'm sorry.
Yeah, is this 72,000 inclusive of the benefits?
Yes,
That is inclusive of the benefits?
yes, I took it right off of the budget document.
Okay, so then what we're looking at is that we have more or less taken a position that's Joe defined as, what was it, 64 to 70, trying to find the silly thing. 64 to 78, we took about the middle.
And-
Yep, 72 is
and
better.
And that's it.
I'm comfortable going to 70. I mean, the issue here is we're trying to bring 4 positions in, and we've still got funding here. So I'm more comfortable erring on the side of caution in being able to fund these positions. We can always go up
When? When are you gonna go up?
when we can discover the funding.
Well, the first thing that
I
we
mean,
have
we're
is.
not too far off, I think, all of us.
The problem is that we have a budget that doesn't take into consideration any of this.
No, I mean,
So we're
we
gonna
gotta
have to
find
have,
this money.
Stephen, when we have to have a budget amendment,
If you go over, yes.
well, we're
So-
certainly gonna go over.
Well, we can have open discussion. My recommendation is to go 72 for April, 85 for Chris.
And see, I would go 70 for April, and, I mean, and it's not anything against the employees, I think they're great employees, but we really seriously have to think about budgeting, and I would, do the 80 for Chris, because we're already giving them a raise doing that. That already gives them a raise from what they're making now.
I thought, Chris, what is your salary with benefits? I thought it was more than that.
No, we're not, well, this is just base.
No, we could talk the whole thing, because it's all
This-
revenue.
But this isn't all in.
Yeah, the number
The
that
72 is
was-
all in.
No,
Right.
72 is,
No, 72 salary.
is
and
base.
The number that we use there, where we start is because that's where he's currently at now, at that management level.
72 is what, I mean.
Well,
what-
okay,
what-
let's go back. I thought these salary ranges from Joe were inclusive
No,
of
that's just base.
benefits.
Oh,
No,
no, not the
no.
salary range on the job description. No, that's just salary. The salary range is
Well,
just
then,
the
you're,
salary.
you're not gonna touch this then for $51,000 or $58,000, I'll tell you right now.
What are you talking about?
You're not gonna touch.
This
The
is
analysis
salary
I did
range.
of taking the money,
You don't include the full all-in compensation with healthcare and all that stuff when you do a salary range.
but you do when you do revenue, well,
Yeah,
you
but
gotta
we're not-
generate the money.
Right, but there's. but
My
that's
point
not
is,
what
is
we're-
that, my
that's not
point
what
is,
we're
Doug,
talking here.
I used 70,000 in my analysis, and I was 81,000 short. If you throw in the benefits, that 81,000 is gonna jump to over 100,000.
It is.
It's a totally different story.
April, I thought the salary ranges did include benefits at the low level and at the high level.
No way.
Not in the
Those were-
salary
No.
range. In the budget that,
That's totally different than what I understood from
preliminary
Joe.
budget that we compiled, that is benefits, salary and benefits.
Let's, April, let's go to your chart. This is what I was getting back to. You're gonna get into this one way or the other.
I mean, honestly, but here,
And I'm worried about the money like Margaret is. I was of the understanding, I would be willing to bite the apple at $81,000 differential. But I thought the 81,000 was inclusive of the benefits. If it's not inclusive of the benefits, we've taken this to a whole new ballgame.
Wait, the estimate that we have right now is a $59,000.
I'm sorry.
Is a $59,000 difference.
Yeah, but that's because you put the Terry component into it. I'm not
That's
putting
gonna
the
be
Terry
available
component
budget.
into it, because Terry's going to be working for us. I don't know that we got that savings.
We're getting caught up here trying to finance something that we don't even have it right now. Whether we've got to find another $20,000, another $30,000, we're getting hung up on what is not important.
But Doug, if it were 20 or 30, I'd be totally agreeing with you. I think we're over 100. I think it's over 100,000.
The solution is that management has to bring back the financial plan, and it has to be within the budget. We have to reprioritize some of our budgets, expenditures that we have for this
Yeah.
year. That was,
So we gotta find the money
that was the
somehow.
discussion.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But $100,000 is a big number to find, and we have to justify to the residents what we're doing here.
Well, Stephen, can we find
and
that money?
my-
If we have to
my-
find $100,000, can we find it?
If you're trying to find it alone from the general fund, that would be tough. Because your reserves in the general fund
But
are starting to go down. If you're splitting it across, I don't know, I'd have to run some numbers for you.
Well, the other one is too, is the analysis I ran is I took the 105,000 and took it all over.
Yes, and the Pelican Preserve, which is not even in here.
Then I took the 120,000 and took it in half. That we could take, and 60,000 would remain with Severn Trent, and 60,000 would go over to the pie. If that doesn't become reality, this then really gets much significantly worse,
Right.
as far as the
but-
differential.
But also, the budget that we prepared for you is on an annualized basis. And so the further we push this out, we have a very short period of any overlap if we can't negotiate with ST down to where our budget thinks that we can get us. That may not be a realistic number, but it's gonna be a very short period of overlap before we go out to bid. And then we only have a half a year to make up. And then we're only gonna have the two new positions for a half a year.
I mean, we
So-
got our finance guy right here. Why are we not talking to him? To say, how big of a
Well,
deal is
here-
it for us to, even if it's $100,000? I mean,
Here's an
if-
example of I'm using, I'm looking at our 2017 budget. For Chris, base salary and benefits, I see 92,567.
But, I mean, is this the conversation that we want to have during, I mean, why have we,
You got money.
well, I understand.
I want to understand where the money is coming from.
Well-
I totally agree with the concept. I just was totally understanding that the $70,000 or the range that Joe gave us was inclusive of benefits. Was inclusive of benefits.
No.
And I'm looking back through my notes because I thought, I've been working on this and it was my understanding that it was inclusive of benefits.
I'm positive it
There's
is.
no way.
Salary range?
Yes.
Not
No way.
salary range.
It's
No.
never that way. Salary ranges are always base salary.
Well, then, it's, again, I'm for the plan, but the knowledge is then you're going to go over $100,000 shortage. There's no doubt in my mind of revenue to pick up to make this real. And that's on the basis that we can split the difference with Severn Trent on the 120,000 management. If that number goes 90-30 or 70-50 instead, all that number does is just keep going up. Then, Stephen, if we do that, what do? We can't go back and change our, or can we, go back and change our budget right here in the middle of the stream effective January 1 that says we need the extra 100,000 to pick this up?
Oh,
Or
no.
whatever the number is?
We can do a budget amendment as of January 1 to do it.
Would that change the assessments?
You can't change the assessments, no.
So
But
then-
there's, you and I talked
You
about
have to use
this.
reserves.
So we would be
For-
using,
Tell them part of this is coming out of the enterprise
Yeah,
fund.
I mean,
This
you
is
you would go
enterprise.
through the individual funds.
We got bulk water, we've got.
pro rata.
And you'd have to use the reserves, yeah.
Okay, okay.
So then we're talking about, when we're talking salary, like you did, then you have to add the percentage for benefits
Yes.
on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Then, then I'm looking at,
22, 28%.
yeah, and it's,
Yeah.
which wasn't, I'm gonna have to, I honestly almost think I'd like to text Joe and see if he'll text me back,
What-
because I thought these salary ranges
They're not.
I was
They're not.
I was
benefits.
totally of that opinion.
They're not.
Totally of that opinion.
There's no way.
The budget summary that we provided, yes, but not the salary ranges.
Say that again, April.
The budget, the budget numbers that we prepared for you, that is salary and benefits. That's full cost.
Correct. And when we're doing this, it's got to be full cost because that's what we got to come up with the
Well,
money.
yeah, but you start with the base. I mean, you have to know what they're,
You
what
have to
we're
set the
paying them,
salary.
and then you put your percentage on top of that.
Again, I understand that. I was just doing it on the basis that that number that Joe gave us as the range was inclusive. And so I came up with that 81,000. My 81,000 is going to go much higher, and I believe yours is, Bob.
Yeah, I just had a comment. I understand the concern here, and we have concerns too about how the financial plans have been put together. I guess my question is what is the need to have all this done today as opposed to doing it in January at your first meeting? Because you've got the holidays.
Because we've been trying to do it since May.
Well, and I understand that, but how much is gonna get done constructively between now and New Year's Day? And then you've got your meeting 4 days later. To me, and this is just a suggestion as your district manager, let us come back and confirm all of your numbers, and then bring back everything on your January 5th meeting. That way, the board has a full understanding of what you're doing and what you're funding. And it's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I don't like jumping off a cliff unless I know how high it is.
Well, and that's why we
I
said
feel like that
initially.
with this new information,
Well,
the
that-
cliff got a little higher.
Well, that's why we said initially, we had some questions too about how it was gonna work. And if we do it that way, that'll give us a chance to work with the chairperson on coming back with a specific scope for Severn Trent, on what we're gonna be able to do financially. We can work those numbers into the analysis and present a complete picture to the board. So you know exactly what you're doing, and then you can make your decision at that time.
I guess the question is, does that necessarily impact what April was saying before? Well, you're not going to be in the conversation, I take it, anyway? Because of the
Well, she
potential
can't be
conflict,
now.
because of the conflict, unless we make
Then
that
who's
change.
gonna-
So,
this
but
is-
the issue is if we go
mess.
back, we're going in circles. If we go back and put April in it right now, we're back to the salary deal again. See where I'm saying? I can go either way. Alls I know is I want to know what the dollar value is on the impact.
I feel your frustration. I'm sorry, I just put a mint in my mouth. We have an organization that needs to be reorganized. You have to sit here and decide, what is that worth to the district? Because you're talking about details, that is what you need to task management with. You need to task us with, this is who we are, reorganize us, task us with making it work in the budget, task us with working with ST, bring us back something that will work. That's what we talked about in the meeting with Mr. DeCerbo, that the supervisors don't need to be overly involved with the minutia of the details. You need to task management with, you make it work. Bring us back the numbers that are gonna make this work. Stay within budget, because if we have to dip into reserves, it's gonna be very little. Reprioritize our expenditures. That's what we're asking you to task us with. So you can make a decision tonight on what our organization needs to look like.
Well, April,
And I
that's all
got-
well and good, but there's a problem.
I got the answer back from him, and he says no.
Know what?
It does not include the salary ranges do not include benefits.
Okay, so if we're at that, and we take that, let's say 120,000, because I think that's where you're headed, and you divide that by our equivalent number of ERUs that's paying for this, we're talking about $17, $18 to every resident in Gateway.
But we're not assessing them.
Right.
No, hold on a minute. Now we're gonna get into a whole different issue. If we approved a budget without it, then that doesn't say much for what we put it in the budget to begin with then. Why did you have that budget? If you had that money there as cash, as a reserve, why did you have it in there in the first place? Makes no sense. Why do we increase the dues so much if that was in there as fat to begin with, that we could just arbitrarily
Well,
pull
that's a
out
whole
and do it
nother-
this way?
I mean, at our.
I mean, we
there's
gotta
a whole-
report-
We can't solve our budgeting practices.
But we gotta report to the residents. And my thing is,
We're
I
making
wanna-
organizational change. It's happening in December. Some are
Organizational change,
unplanned.
I don't have a problem with organizational change. I'm
And then
trying
how
to
we're
figure out
gonna
where the
fund it, we're gonna
money,
figure out how
where
to
the
fund
money
it.
is at.
We're gonna, we may have to cut some things back, we may have to tap into some things, but in order for us to move forward, just like that first slide that I put up today during our work session, if we want to be the company we want to be, we have to stop being who we are today. If we walk out of here without this thing going through, I think, once again, we have failed.
But the deal is, Doug, we've got to have transparency on these
We
dollars.
have transparency.
No,
We're
we-
making a
no,
complete
no, I
organizational
don't believe we
change.
did, because we already have a misunderstanding, the two of us were of the opinion that it was something, when it was something else.
And I,
Which is, at the end, is not that big of a deal, but we've got to know what those numbers really are. If April's is going to be 70 base and the other three are going to be 70 base, then you're going to be looking at, in reality, that they're 91 at the full deal.
Yep.
And then if,
93,800.
thank you. So theirs is going to be 93,800, and then Chris's is going to be, what are we saying, based on Chris?
Well, I said 85, but
So 85 plus 28%, 30%, something like that. So you're going to be well over $100,000 difference.
and we've thrown more than that away in other projects and other loss and other things in this organization.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
So-
and this 93,800 is with salary of 70,000.
For April.
No, they're all set
It's all
at
three the same,
72.
is what we're.
They're all set at 72.
It's a it's a budget, we started with what the
72 is
current
commensurate
salary
to
is
what,
at that
yeah.
level.
That's where I got the 72 from, because that's what that current level position is today.
Okay, what is your salary right now?
I'm paid by Severn Trent $68,000 a year.
Exclusive or inclusive of benefits?
No, that's exclusive, that's my salary,
50,
68,000.
I didn't hear that.
68.
68, okay, I'm sorry. Is that why you said 70?
Yes.
Okay, you were aware of that.
I did 25% for benefits.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to 28, but,
For the 93,800, I took the 93,800 and backed out 25% for benefits, and that came to 70,000.
there we go. Okay, how are we going? Somebody make a motion. Bob has offered to take and bring that back to first, but I don't know that that needs to be, I don't know why he still can't do that, but we transfer April over.
No, you got to have the salary. I mean,
Well, if we transfer April over, you gotta have the salary.
well, yeah, you do.
But there's nothing wrong that
So
we
you've
take.
got a motion on the floor.
I don't think I have a second to it. Yeah. I don't have any trouble with taking April over. Is one thing that we could sure as hell live with is take her over, and at least until we get everything number-wise, bring her over at the salary she's currently making.
That was gonna be my suggestion, keep her at 68.
Just keep it the same,
Until we
and
get,
then we can take and adjust it when we go out for the others.
When we go out in January.
That's the easiest way.
I think that would be,
And so, okay, what, if, well.
That would be the
we'll start-
easiest way of doing it.
Let's start with that and make that motion and see if that carries.
So you're
I-
keeping both in there.
At this point in time,
Well, we're not even paying, I mean.
I'm not
we
making a
don't-
motion for the others, Doug, the other
We're not
positions.
paying
I'm just
April.
going to simply make April's pay equivalent to what she is currently at until we get the report on January the 5th.
are you making that motion?
I'm making that motion.
I second that motion.
I know. Well, that's, you got to make that point down at the other end.
And that's effective tomorrow?
Effective tomorrow.
Yep.
And subject to a revision at or after the January 5th meeting when we see what Severn Trent's going to bring back as far as the recommendation on the dollars.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think that's the easiest way.
That's one step.
Yeah. The other one, I don't think we can do anything. I think we have to wait on Bob.
We're trying to get April as an employee of the district.
Well,
I understand.
well,
But we've got a motion and a second.
yeah,
The motion and the second is to bring April.
On board effective
on board,
immediately.
Effective tomorrow as a district employee, as the business manager, at the current salary that she's making, with the idea that that is going to change when we get a chance to sit down with Severn Trent and reevaluate
total
the
dollar impact.
finances.
Yes.
And I think Mr. Conkar has no difficulty with that concept with regards to April.
No, if all we're addressing tonight on the contract amendment is April's position, we're fine with that.
I think based upon what Tony told us, it just doesn't sound like to me that there's a fit to do the district manager unless we start getting in and playing games with asterisks or small print or something like that. I mean, that 2 weeks we can wait. That allows us then to get all this other stuff, because we're totally relying on you coming back and not only, one, telling us how we're going to fund this thing, but two, what you're going to do and what we're going to do and what it's going to cost us going
Right.
on.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and I guess as part of the discussion earlier this year in June or July was to, amend the agreement to take out operations manager and also remove that, I think it was $105,000.
Yeah, that's what
From
it
the
is.
agreement. Is that something you're also agreeable with?
Yeah, that's part of the,
Operations manager.
the
Contract.
current contract, yes.
Okay, thank you. That might take a second motion, but to take care of that aspect.
Because the most important thing we need to do is get April as an employee of the district.
Yeah, that's the first step. It's a-
How much we eventually end up paying her isn't as important as
It's
getting
105.
her on board. Because then she can help with the negotiation and help
This
with
is-
getting
this
the
will have that in June.
finances that help get this organization headed in the right direction.
Yeah, this is Ken's stuff.
Any other comments?
You don't want to hear it.
I'm happy to hear it.
I would.
We need to address the other items that are in this recommendation. I don't
We've
know,
got.
So if that's like six,
You've got a motion and a second on an important item, and I think it's time to call the roll and get April
Okay.
employed if she still wants to work for us.
All right, I'll call the question. All
Aye.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now,
No
Tony,
one's
what can we
opposed,
do relative to the rest of
Well,
the?
what I would suggest also is that the board authorize the chairman to sign the third amendment to the district management services agreement. It's in substantially final form. You may not all have it. As a document from June of this year that removes a reference to operations manager and changes Exhibit C, which is the compensation amount, by deleting the amount of $105,000 for on-site management.
Okay. I'd make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, any other
I
discussion?
don't think we have any choice but to do that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Now, what do we need or what can we do to endorse the remaining recommendations of the plan? How do we do that without getting into this conflict on the district manager title? Or is this something that has to be, I have no problem with making a motion to accept the concept, because I'm
If you're not-
100% behind it. I just
you
don't
can
know how
leave
we
that
can do it.
out.
We can leave that out?
I mean, if you want to, you can leave that out until the recommendation is brought out, and
Okay.
then January 5th, you make a recommendation to transition Chris to that position at that time at X salary, period. What we need to address is the part-time position, and we need to determine whether or not we're going to wait till January 5th to look to start the public works, or even Chris's backfill for the utility manager, and that's a timing.
I disagree with you, I'm sorry to say. We are treating our very valuable employees like they're lumps of coal, and they're sitting here listening to all of this.
Well, Bill, the problem with that is that's the law. I
It
talked
is
to
not.
April.
It is not.
What's
Tony's
the-
smart enough to tell us, we can have Chris come in as acting district manager.
Oh, no, no,
We
no,
can
I'm
have him
talking
come
about,
in-
I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about the fact, I talked to Chris in April about the fact that this silly sunshine law makes you have these in the sunshine. And it's tough, but it's the life you live
It
with.
does not have to be this tough.
But the thing is that I'm all for bringing in Chris right now. I've been preaching it for some time. Bring him in. It's the complication of this technicality that we already have a district manager. I'm trying to figure out how to get
Call him
around.
administrative assistant, call him chief cook and bottle washer.
Just not
I
late
don't
to
care what
dinner.
you call him, just get him
I have no problem with that as long as we have no legal issue.
Well, again, he's not the district manager under the statute, but he's the district manager from the standpoint of the hierarchy, I guess, of the organizational structure.
Internally.
Internally.
Can we call it interim?
Call him a, yeah, what's your new title gonna be, April, in-house?
Business,
Can I make a comment?
business manager.
Okay, he can be the general manager interim and then take him on as the district manager later.
Think about
Maybe
it this
that's what
way.
we're doing.
What do we tell staff tomorrow? Are you going to assign a district manager to the district in-house on the 1st of January, only if ST comes back with a certain dollar amount? Is that what the decision is? in
We're
the
gonna have
beginning
this
of January?
conversation all over again if
Right.
we try and do it that way.
Right, so I want us to think right now as far as reorganizing. Tell me what I tell staff tomorrow. What is gonna happen in January?
Right now, as I understand it, we're accepting and endorsing this organizational plan, but because of a technicality on a wording, our option is that we wait till January the 5th to get around the technicality, or we take and make it a different name. Tony had an idea.
We're not gonna do that.
We'll
We're
call,
not gonna call him,
we'll call him general manager.
I think it's ridiculous.
Well,
You
here-
guys are
but the
missing-
issue is
What about
contractually, they are the
district
district
manager?
manager unless they agree to terminate that as of today, they're the district manager.
And
And
I don't think we have the ducks lined up to make that decision, for one reason. We haven't agreed on what the
Who
contract they're doing
dictates
and what
who's
we're
the
doing.
district manager?
I'm sorry,
The management company or the board?
we have a contract, they are the
they
manager
are the manager
under the
by our
contract.
contract.
Why are we spinning our wheels? We've got 7 or 8 smart people here, and we don't act like it.
What's the motion you would make, Bill?
I would make the motion to employ Chris as acting district manager tomorrow.
I have no problem with that. If man to my left says
Interim
we don't have a
district
legal,
manager.
we don't have a
But-
legal
but,
issue.
Again, the problem is you would have two district managers and
We
check.
don't. We have one district manager and one interim, or one acting, or one probationary, or one,
What do they call him? Bobby Bowden was leaving and manager in waiting. That's what Bobby Bowden was, a coach in waiting.
Nothing's gonna change with the dollar amount of the contract
He started
until we
taking
bring
over.
that back to you.
I
All,
don't have any
all
problem
we're
with that.
saying is
District
from an
manager in waiting.
organizational
District manager in
perspective,
waiting.
Yeah.
who's
problem with
that
that,
top
'cause we're gonna do it.
person? Are we serious about
Florida State and Bobby Bowden.
relinquishing the control of the district management company? Or are we going to wait until January and relinquishing control and bringing it in-house, or gaining the control is contingent on what ST brings back to us in January?
Don't go there.
That's what I'm trying to figure
We're gonna
out.
go through this whole darn thing again.
If what you're saying, and Tony had the deal, we call him district manager in
In
waiting,
waiting.
until we can legally get over that
Until we
deal.
terminate
In other
the
words, we
relationship.
sign the contract amendment with Severn Trent.
Make the motion. I make that motion.
Thank you. You're making that motion to make Chris immediately the district manager in waiting, pending then the January 5th meeting, at which time it becomes, or we have the ability for it to become no longer in waiting.
Make it.
Until
yeah.
the contract is modified.
Yeah.
That is my motion.
I'll
Second.
Wait a minute.
We have a second.
Mr. Larry has a question.
Okay, how about setting the wage? We're gonna keep him at the present wage that he's at now?
Well, that's the precedent we've already set.
I think that would be the way we do until we get to that date, and then go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Call the roll.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nobody.
It was complicated, but we got it
You
done.
you can wait inside.
Now, what about the other items?
The only thing I think on the part-time is I would like to hear that we've talked to the insurance company. The last thing I want to do is something to an employee that is, I mean, totally relying on our insurance. I don't want to throw anybody out.
And April, I think you've already worked on this? You've worked on this with Terry, have you? Because I'd like to approve all of these items so that
Right.
they can move forward.
Right.
You talk to the insurance company that if we send him to a part-time position, he will be fully covered under our insurance.
We decide who we're gonna insure.
Right.
So if we make an agreement, a contract, the supervisors can have as many contract employees as they want, and in that contract, those benefits and wages are up to you to
That's
decide.
not
The en-
what I ran into in my life. My life is that if you had an employee that did not work 32 hours, you didn't have insurance coverage on a plan. That's my question, is does our plan and our insurance agent, will they cover him as an employee if he goes either under the
If he's
category
on a
part-time?
contract, if he's on a contract, they won't violate our policy.
That's what I want to
and
make
do
sure we
that.
don't do.
So-
And on the second hand, I don't want to have him lose benefits.
And part of this agreement is, in what you're approving, is really just to develop the position and give management direction to work on that contract language. At that time, we would approach all of those legalities.
At this point in time, if you would take and we go with this, and assuming that the insurance is not an issue, we're going to enter into a contract with this employee?
Mhm.
Don't like
Ju-
that, but anyway, are we going to reduce his salary by 20%?
That's all gonna be negotiable, as we need to sit down and we need to craft the specifics of it. That's what we've asked
So then
for here.
all we're doing tonight then is authorizing
creating
that
the
procedure
position.
to start?
Mhm,
Yeah,
yes.
and- yeah, and I
Okay,
think-
not complete it, not approve it,
Nope.
but to start.
It'll have to come back to you.
I can
yeah,
go along
and that
with
gets back to, in the manual, you have a different employee position,
Right.
as outlined in
Yeah.
the memo.
Yeah.
So I'd like to
I'd
entertain a
agree to that.
motion to go ahead and accept the recommendation to move forward with the action items 3 through 8.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
8, why are we contracting? I thought everything we're doing is at will. Why are we going to have contracts? We're going to
Oh, yeah, that should be.
we don't want, I don't want contracts for employees. It's all at will.
Okay, so, why we put that in there is because we were working with me from the beginning, and we considered putting me on a contract.
I was totally disapproved
Right.
against that in the audience, and I'm
So
disapproved in
the
it. against it here.
supervisors, and that's before you for approval, because it's up to you, the supervisors have the latitude, when you have a district manager, just like ST is on a contract, you have the latitude to, because typically in an organization, you can contract with your top management position, because that top management position could be entitled to benefits that
We've
are,
already addressed
that are
that.
greater.
Tony and I-
So
we've
if we just want a
we've already
general
addressed that with
employee.
a different class of employee.
Yes.
They're still at will, and
Okay.
I know what you're saying, but we have a.
I
we have-
Okay,
like
just
I
wanted
like
to be
that
sure.
idea. I like that idea. That's how we did it in business. We
Yeah.
had different levels.
Yeah, you just did different class.
It's
That should be an
still a
at-will
contract at
position.
will, but you have a set of what the, let's say, for lack of a better term, the benefits of
Right.
each position are. That I'm totally for.
Yeah.
Okay, so go back and we'll revise that job description to include those
You
specific
should,
things.
in my opinion, you should be doing that for those 4 management positions.
Yeah, they're all the same, yeah.
Okay.
Well, they might be a little different, but the same
but the same,
concept.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree to that.
Kathy?
Okay, you're authorizing management to advertise, but we don't have a salary range, because we haven't consulted
I
that.
think you
So
got,
we-
well,
we
hold it,
should
you got a
wait.
problem on that. Until you go and get the people in, I'd leave it as a range.
Well,
We do have a
right.
salary range.
You
I'd have a
salary
range.
You can move
range
forward
is
with
in-
the range.
You don't want to sit there right now and tell, we might get the best guy in the world that would come in and be laughing his rear end off us. I would have taken 60, and they offered me 80.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Just
The salary
stick with the
range.
range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the salary range for that is set. So, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We got there.
And I don't know who put all this together, but this is one heck of a job, guys.
This was
So,
April.
there's a
April
lot
did-
of work to
April
put
did
this together.
A lot of this hard work.
It's very good.
So I know we took a motion, and that's documented. Can I review them, just to be sure that I have an understanding of what we're doing?
Yep.
Yes.
Number one, we're gonna bring the district manager position in-house and promote Chris Shoemaker to district manager in waiting at his current salary.
Yes.
Correct.
Number two, we're bringing we're transitioning my position in-house to the business manager position, and I'm coming in at my current salary of $68,000, and we are waiving the 90-day probationary period.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Number three, we're creating the new temporary part-time consultant position. That's all we're doing for that. And so you approved that, and we will work to develop a contract arrangement to bring back to you. Number four is create a new Public Works Manager position and authorize management to advertise position. We can go ahead, or advertise the position. We can go ahead and proceed with that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Authorize management to advertise the Utilities Manager position. We can proceed with that.
Yes.
Adopt the job descriptions. We proceeded with that. We've adopted all four of the job descriptions with the caveat that we can come back and modify those descriptions for any of the at-will and special language that we may want to customize for those four positions. Okay, and then authorize management to negotiate the modifications to the Severn Trent contract based on the adopted job descriptions.
And
So let's-
to be fair to Severn Trent, I really think we take those 5 pages of Exhibit B and make it categorically clear to them, we're going to take this, you're going to take this. So that alls we're doing is just basically, when we're done, for the amendment, is just striking out the things that we're taking over. And then, Chris, you and April are going to have to sit down, realizing, and I've told you 100 times, we've got one heck of a lot of work coming up until we get those 2 people in here. Don't bite off more than we can chew.
Okay. And then number 8 is we don't want to do a contract employee for the district manager. It's going to be an at-will job description.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I think you need to be, because this issue's going to come up again when we bring in those other 2 people. I think it would be a good idea now that you and Chris sit down and start enumerating what this benefit package for this position, what you envision. Because when you start bringing in these other people, that's going to be one of the first questions they're going to ask. What do I get? What do I have besides this salary? So
Well,
I think we need to
Well, the
be
benefit
working on that.
package is relatively fixed at the moment because we have the benefits that we offer. We have the retirement, the 3% into the 457, and we also have the health insurance.
Well, you can start with what you had on your contract,
It would
and
be
you already
Chris's.
know, and maybe modify based upon that.
It would be what Chris has.
Yes.
He's the current at-will employee at that level that we
Okay,
would mimic.
whatever, yeah.
And I'm assuming the board wants me to continue working on, although this was a little bit bizarre. I'm sorry for that, because I had the
Wasn't
same
easy.
misunderstanding that Ed did on the salary ranges. That I would like to continue working on this so that we can get this to a resolution that everybody's happy with, including April and Chris.
Yeah, and as quick as Steve, notwithstanding the Severn Trent management contract for the à la carte items, I'd certainly like not to wait January 5th to hear the surprise you're gonna come from, where the money's coming from.
So you want a Christmas gift.
I'm not looking at it as a gift,
then-
just knowledge so to be able to chew, because maybe throw stuff back.
And he needs to be looking at the 2 new positions as well.
That's totally right. And I think you're just gonna have to take those and guesstimate some numbers based on what you heard tonight as to where we're heading
Based
on
our
that, what that
midpoint.
total number
That's-
is.
That's what you base it on.
Oh, what, Doug?
Based on on the midpoint, where Chris was.
That'd be a
I mean,
good
that's-
start.
Yeah.
That'd be a good start.
But this gets us to that point.
Yes.
We'll work forward, and
right
like I
there.
said, we'll make sure that
You guys already voted,
April
right?
and Chris are happy.
You guys voted, right?
Hmm?
You guys already voted,
Yes,
right?
we're voted.
So congratulations is in order?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
You're on board.
I thought that was for us in getting this far.
We got you on board. Whew.
Next.
And that finally brings us to staff reports, district council.
Just some general updates to the Pelican Reserve Association Maintenance Agreement. John Grega and I will be meeting with the management folks and the attorney for the Pelican Reserve Community Association on Monday. They've raised a couple of new issues. Hopefully we can resolve those, and hopefully bring that to the board January 5th. On the traffic control agreement for Pelican Reserve, I was nudging the city attorney, and he took offense to that and said I was aggressive and lashing out. I thought I was being professional,
He hadn't met me yet.
but we continue to pursue that. And we have a meeting tomorrow with regards to the Ford line issue. And on the road conveyance, should have the revised final surveys. The chairman has signed the document so we can get the bonds, so we're about 99.8% there to submit to the county. And I've passed it on to Mr. Cecil and also talked to Neil Montgomery today about that. And on January 5th, also anticipate bringing back the roads from WCI to the district, those various roadway segments. And Mr. Cecil has been very helpful, nudging me along.
I'm sure that's true.
Prod.
Kicking the butt.
Okay. District engineer. Thank you for staying.
No problem. So, my name is Tyler Wainwright. I'm with Tetra Tech. So, this is a very lengthy memo ahead of you. I'm not going to sit here and go over every single aspect, but there's 5 discussion items that we kind of need some direction to wrap this thing up with how we're going to move forward with the lake project. So, basically where we're at is design is more or less complete. We are ready to go back to the state and formalize our loan for construction with them. There's a couple of items that we need to work out here that we can talk about and just, I guess, go through each one and get a decision on, and then we'll be good to go. There's a lot of little nitty-gritty stuff that we still need to work out, but I don't think this is the right place to work that out. I think us and staff can work through those things.
Margaret, I totally agree with Tyler. I'd like to take and approve or give him guidance on the questions asked. Chris and I have been talking. I would like to sit down with Chris and we work out. We have a bunch of details that have to be put on those plans that is not in a part of the contract they've got. This easement issue is a real touchy one on each one of these 4 or 5 lakes, depending on which plan we go with. But I'd like to sit down with Chris and try to enumerate that, looking at the timeline going backwards, and on the basis that the worst-case scenario would be a February 15th approval in Tallahassee. We got a bidding period, I'm going to guess 3 weeks to a month. And then we've got to take and get the advertisement out and all the other, and change the plans and modify the plans to add this stuff in. We're up against the clock of having that stuff to Tyler, I'm going to say no later than January 15th. So as to when we get the go-ahead from Tallahassee, we want to be doing construction.
Yes,
We don't
we
want to
do.
be waiting until March 15th.
No, we don't.
So I would like to be able to sit down and work with Chris on trying to help get the stuff that's not in the plans over to Tyler and onto the plans so that we can get that part behind us and then answer just right now and give him the guidance of what are the plans. And I think the first question is that, which one of those options that, has everybody read this?
Yes.
I had a motion to make a 5th plan. I went through it, and I did this for one reason. I like your one plan, which is the one where you do it in 2 years. I see, based upon the deal that we have, and these vendors have told us they can do 200 feet a day, there is absolutely no reason why we need to take 3 years and worry about cost increases when we can do it in 2. And my motion would be to proceed with what you had said originally, 86, 87, 116, 118, and 126, which amount to about 16,000 feet, which can more than easily, at 200 feet a day, be done in the period that we have to do the work.
You're talking option 2?
Well, it's a modified option 2. Instead of year 1 being 8790, I'm using the ones that we put out to the public that everybody is seeing or has seen to date, 86, 87, 116, 118, 126 first. And I believe Tyler's firm have done the plans on all of those. And in fact, they've even, if you wanted to throw in to make it 6 and 7 instead of 5 and 8, they've done 90.
Can you read those to me one more time? Which one do you want to do? 86, 87?
86, 87, 116, 118, 126.
Okay. Yeah, we're good with those.
And I believe you've done also 90, so 90 might be pushing it if you put 90 in, because now you're up to right against the limit of a March 1 to a June 15th completion date. But do it in 2 years. My recommendation is 5 and 8.
So you're creating an option 5 by taking Lake 86 out of year 2 and putting it into year 1.
That is correct. And taking 90 out and putting in 116. In other words, what we had identified in the facilities plan, the first 5 lakes were 86, 87, 116, 118, and 126. Going along with that original schedule.
Is that your motion?
Yes. There'll be several because he's got several questions.
Okay.
I mean, just as a general comment here, I don't know if we need to make motions on this, do we? I mean, this is just direction to us, or do we need to make a
Well-
motion? I don't know.
That's
I
my,
think we could
that's, that's my
provide you with
motion for
direction.
direction to you.
That's fine.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with 86, 87, 118, 116, 126.
Correct.
All right.
The next
Ed, are you
one,
guys still looking to multi-bid this thing?
was my next one.
Wait, time out.
Yeah.
I recognize your right to do what you just think you did.
What I did do.
We haven't done it.
Okay.
But I'm wondering why we have, professional engineers on board giving us 4 recommendations. If you're going to try and intercede and make your view.
One reason, Bill.
Yeah,
This
please.
was our original plan. This was our original plan, and that was prepared by them. The original letter that they sent to this board, if you recall, about a month ago, the 5 ponds was 86, 87, what I just enumerated.
I remember,
Yeah.
I remember that.
So I'm not
there's-
overruling them. I'm saying, go back to what you told us we were going to do in the beginning.
I want to hear from Tyler. There's a message here that I'm not getting, and I'd like to hear it.
So Danny's recommendation in this memo was he wanted to go with option 3. Option 3 was essentially do 3 lakes in year 1. The reason for that is by DEP moving their hearing date back from January 15th to February 15th, they haven't officially announced that yet, but it looks like that's what they're going to do. You lose a month. So instead of doing 5 lakes, they try to cut it down to 3 to try to get something realistic to be buildable. You may end up being able to build 5 lakes this year. I don't know. You can always certainly bid 5, and if you don't build them, then you don't build them. But there's no reason why you can't bid 5, I suppose.
I just don't see the risk. We're trying to just save
The
money.
farther we can get down the road, the better off we are.
We have 13 inches of rain in January. We're not going to get 2.
Yeah, we get 13
No, I
inches
mean,
of rain in
there's-
January, it's a whole new ballgame.
There's a ton of unknowns with doing this type of work.
We run that all
Last
the
year,
time.
we thought we were golden doing work in Pelican in the lakes over there. And like you're saying, it rained every damn day in January last year, or this year.
You run into
13
that
inches.
no matter what.
Right, so there's a ton of unknowns. I'm not gonna sit here and guarantee you're gonna get these 5 lakes done. I'll tell you, we'll bid them, and we'll get prices, and we'll do our best.
Okay, I just
But going to the.
want to make sure
Yeah.
that there's not a
That's-
headbutting
no, it's-
between you two guys.
Oh, no. We've talked. It's the consistency of staying with what we've told the public as our first 5 worst lakes to do. I think we're just staying consistent with it. I think the other issue is that, do we go bid them all as one lump sum or go to individual? I still fall back, go individual for one reason. One of our 4 contractors, if you go lump sum with all of them, he's out. He can't bond it.
Why do
Well-
we care about one contractor?
Well, we care about the lowest possible bid that we can get. So
Well-
we would like to have that bidder bidding. It's one that's been doing our work, to tell you the truth.
Well,
I hate to lose that
Well, why can't they,
contractor.
I mean, whether you're bidding for 1 or for 5, you saying they don't have capacity to do 5?
That's correct.
5 lakes?
That's
over
correct.
over
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time period?
And there's another issue too. Keep in mind that our goal here is to have this done on or about June 15th before the rainy season starts. If we get this out to one contractor, and Tyler and I've had this discussion, that guy's got to bring in multiple crews to get all this done. I mean, multiple crews to achieve this. We might get a better chance of going this way. Bid it as each pond on its own, okay? Then allow, if we've got bidder X, one of our 4, that wants to come in and say, hey, I'll give you a deduct of X thousand, give me all 5. Makes it easy for us. First question is, can you get it all 5 done in the same period? And if he gets that answer, now the question is his bid lower than the 5 low added? We'll take that. I do it all the time.
Well,
It's very
I
easy.
just have a real issue with doing this single bid, because I think us trying to manage, I mean, we have a hard time managing one vendor, much less multiple. But, you know, this is not my, you know.
It's
my
not
area.
that difficult, Doug. I'll tell you where the bigger problem, my concern is. The bigger problem is not the construction management, because I think we've learned on that. We let the professionals do it from the beginning based upon a good design spec, and I think what they're doing is going to be a good design spec. I'm more concerned about us even having the thought of doing in-house the SRF management. We need, as Joe DeCerbo said, we need to bring in somebody like, what's his name, Cabot?
Corbett?
Corbett, and sub that out and let them do the EPA or the SRF stuff, the in-house
We don't
management.
have that budgeted.
I'm sorry?
We don't have the
It comes
budget.
right out of the SRF loan.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
If you hire out an additional
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
party, you
it
can
does.
fund
if we
that.
hire
You're
out,
right.
yeah. If we did it in-house, one, we'd have to get our employees trained
you're right.
on payrolls,
Yeah.
on Davis, but it's not worth it.
That's
It's
not worth it.
No,
That's
I
an
agree with that.
impossibility.
Yeah, it's not even, I agree with that.
But charging us $2,500 a month to do that, which is what,
That's-
ridiculous.
Bill, I disagree. It's an unbelievable price. My company charged triple that.
I don't care.
Yeah,
Your
we did the
company-
same thing.
Your company made too much money. It
Well,
doesn't,
Well, I'll tell you what the going rate is. We don't have the people to bring in and train for it's a part-time job. That's all it is.
right?
Where are we going to get the education to do that? I'm telling you, going by what Joe says, I totally agree with him, the best way is to sub that portion of it out.
You're skipping ahead.
I
That's
agree.
number
I
5.
agree with that. Sub it out, absolutely, but not for $2,500 a month.
Well, let's see.
Well, if
what
we sub it out, we'll
someone
have a
else does.
contract and we'll an RFP and we'll find out. We'll find
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But I definitely think that bidding them individually gets us the best opportunity for the cheapest price. And if one contractor would want to run the risk of coming and say, I'll give you all 5, and you can knock 25% off my bid, and that 25% off his bid is less than the 5
Well-
lows, we got a hell of a
So
deal.
we're essentially gonna do both. We're gonna bid
Do
out
both.
individually, but if
And
one says, hey,
allow an
I can
alternate
do all
bid.
5, here's my bid, and if it's, you know, it's comparable or cheaper, then,
Well,
and
you
it
might-
meets our timeline, then we don't really care.
No,
right?
that's exactly right.
All right,
And
as
you-
long as that's on the table and
Yeah.
that's.
Right.
Well, you have another alternative. He might come in, you might have one contractor come in and says, I'll take 2 of the 5. And his single price for the 2 are lower
Yeah,
than the
okay,
2
that's-
lows.
all right,
I mean,
you guys are gonna work
you
that,
allow
that's
that.
fine.
It's easy to do.
What we'd like to do is get the best price.
Yes.
So if it's bidding all 5 of them as a packet that you think we're gonna get a better price, or if you think it's bidding them individually, we'll get a better price. I wanna do it how we're going to get a better price.
There's
Get
a,
a good job. Price
Get it-
is important,
yes.
obviously,
Well,
but get a good
keep-
job.
keep in mind that we kind of threw that one out the window now, Bill, because we have pre-selected contractors that will give us a good job.
Right.
Better.
Otherwise,
All right, let's
we'd
keep
go back to
rolling.
open bidding.
Pre-qualified. Okay.
What else we got?
I think Kathleen had something to say.
Okay. Can I go to item number 3?
Yes.
I'd like to just continue with item number 2 for 1 second, if you can.
So that would be my
So-
recommendation, is we go bid them individually and then allow what we call alternative bids, that if somebody wants to try to sweep the table or run the table, let them, show us the numbers.
Well, why
Here's
don't we
what I'll
bid it
say.
both ways?
You can do that. Now, I think what Ed said a minute ago about trying to group into 2 lakes and things like that, I don't think you ought to do that, because you're gonna make these bids very complicated in what you bid and what you look at, and, I mean, you're talking about a lot of different scenarios to give contractors a bid. I don't wanna hand a contractor, you can bid this option, or this option, or this option, or this option, and then these 2 lakes, and pick your 2 favorite and give us a price on those, because trying to compare bids between all those people is gonna be very difficult and very confusing. Another problem I think you're gonna have trying to group all those, now that you've got 5 lakes, is bonding capacity. You're gonna have to bond that entire contract value. So you're likely gonna be, $2 million. I don't know if these contractors have $2 million of bonding capacity.
Well, that's
So
the argument for doing it individually.
it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to consider there.
Yes.
Why didn't we consider that when we pre-qualified them?
Well, we did. We considered bonding capacity, but I'm just saying, we didn't make a decision when we pre-qualified if we were going to award single lakes or groups of 5 very large lakes, which is what the board just gave me direction to do. So 126, that's a big lake. I mean, that's like a $500,000 lake. So when you start adding these all up, I'm just saying, if you go with one bid for 5 lakes, you may preclude down to maybe just 2 of the 4 contractors. But then again, I guess you're giving a bid option to where you could still consider the individual price of other lakes, so.
Yeah. We get the lowest, best bid when we bid them individually.
Let's make a decision and go on. I'm getting tired of this.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way of doing it. You get the best of both worlds. And if you don't put it in as an alternative bid, my experience up north was if the contractor is hungry enough, he'll give you an alternative bid and he'll put it in his package.
Yeah, but you can't
And he makes you think about it then.
review it unless you specifically
That's
advertise
correct.
it to all contractors.
That's correct.
Say that again?
You can't, you'd have to tell every contractor, you must bid this and this. You
So
can't
it's
have one
illegal to have a
contractor give
voluntary
you a.
alternate?
Correct, it
sorry?
doesn't qualify, it's not responsive to the bid.
Right, you couldn't,
No,
you
no,
couldn't
no, no,
award
no,
that.
that's not what I said. He'll bid, the bid is bid. He will give you a voluntary bid.
No,
in
you
addition.
couldn't accept that bid.
Let me ask this,
That's correct, no.
if we bid these individual and people come back with their price, can we give Lake 116 to this vendor and
Yes.
Lake 87 to this vendor?
Yep.
Because we've looked at all the bids.
Yeah, we have their, I
Yeah.
think that's what we're talking
Yeah,
about,
you
having the
can manage
choice.
2 or 3 simultaneous vendors
Yeah.
and all the cost and oversight that goes.
In other words,
along.
all or some of the lakes may go to one vendor, or they can bid as a package for all 5, they can bid 2, they can bid 3, they can bid 1 more, you know, I mean,
But I agree with Tyler.
5
on
separate
it.
ones.
Our risk is if we go and put them all together as one of our pre-selects is gone right off the bat. The
Okay,
problem is
so-
that will we lose all of them?
You wanna go single, bid
Single.
alternate, do the whole deal.
Correct.
Yeah,
Everybody's okay with that?
yes,
If you're okay with it.
I am okay with that, yes, sir.
okay. Discussion item 3, moving on.
Okay. Would the contractors let you, buy all the material in bulk?
Oh, yeah, it's done all the
Would
time.
they let us? They would prefer it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because the time delay by the time they buy that material, land it on site, go install it, invoice for payment, and actually receive payment, you're probably talking at least 60 days, and they really don't want to sit on that. So I think they would give you a much more competitive price if Gateway supplied the material. That's my
Totally-
opinion.
Totally agree.
And if it's individually lakes bid, the bids are individual, it wouldn't make any difference then to any of the contractors?
No, it would, if you do award smaller individual lakes to contractors, it's all more the reason why Gateway should
Yes.
buy in bulk, because their pricing is going to be worse the smaller amount they order. So if you have 4 different contractors making 4 separate small orders, their pricing is not going to be as good as if Gateway just made one large order.
Our only
Are
issue
you gonna
is
store it
Yeah.
and dash it out for us?
we store it.
Me personally?
He's got a garage. The issue is with that, we can quantify the square yardage of each lake down to almost the gnats, you know what.
I think it's a terrible idea, it's
So
terrible.
But Bill, it could be worth as much as $250,000.
I think it's a terrible idea. You'll be kicking yourself in the teeth every time.
I've done it before and it's not that difficult.
Well,
Where
I've done a
will-
lot of
It's not-
construction
not
too,
that-
and
not
I
that
think it's a
difficult.
terrible idea.
Where will it be stored?
We'll have to store it
Because
here.
we're gonna get a lot, we'll get a lot of product, so.
There, you've got a couple of different locations you could store it in. Probably what would make the most sense, in my opinion, is just go rent some Connex containers, just shipping containers. Set them somewhere throughout the community. You can set them here, back behind the dog park.
You get
Not in our
security.
storage
You got
spot, you know.
security.
We're working on that.
You got security here. That's the
There's a
thing.
couple different locations that you could store it.
Okay.
You're probably gonna have to rent a Connex and store it in there, so it's locked. And then someone is going to have to be responsible for managing distribution of that material. There is a staff burden for sure, and I don't wanna
But it's easy.
undersell that to you. It's gonna take some time from somebody at the district to manage that.
Yeah,
Put me down as a no.
You take the square yardage per pond, and you take when they come off the truck, you take so many, if pond 1 is 10,000 square yards, you put 10,000 square yards with a marker on it, that's for pond 1.
Well, have you
It's
standing
easy-
there
easy-
doing that?
It's easy to do.
It will get messed up as much as I'm sitting here.
I don't think so.
I like the direct material purchase.
The savings is what I like.
Yep.
I was as skeptical
That's-
against this
that's
as.
if there's limited waste, that, there's.
Yeah,
there's a lot. Has to be managed well, and that's
That's right.
something we
And-
don't do.
And what he has is he's got to put in the specifications what the details are of how it works. If we have it here and we have a purchase, basically a purchase sheet, they come in and sign, they being the contractor of each of the lakes, come in and sign and pick up their allotted pond number of material. It's that simple.
I hope it works out.
So is that a 3-2?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Okay, item 4, extent of repair, residential side and beyond.
So this one, it's, all we're asking here is basically, we want to go look at doing two things. One, the side of the ponds that we are doing right now, being the residential sides, looking at various areas where we cannot do a full-blown repair with the Armor Max material and do something a little bit less, like a coconut matting or something less expensive to
Yes.
try to,
Yes,
in certain areas where the erosion's really not that bad right now, there may not be a need to do a full-blown repair. We'd like to go and look at that as cost savings.
yes.
So that's part
please.
one. Part two is, we are only doing the residential side in this current design. I don't know if there is a desire for Gateway to go look at the other sides of the ponds, like golf course sides or commercial sides. Those, we're not looking at those right now currently.
Here's my thought on that. I wish we wouldn't have done it this way, but I think we're far enough down the road that because of the dollar value on the $5 million construction, $1 million non-construction cost, if at best, let's bid these first 5, verify that our estimates are high, and that we have more money to spend, then we can consider that maybe on the next round of ponds. I would have loved to have done them all together.
Agree with you 100%. As much as I disagreed with you on the last one, I agree with you.
I just don't think, I'm a little concerned that the money, looking, ponds 106, 7, and 8, and 104, ingress, egress, was a snap in the bucket until you hit ponds 116, 118, and 126. They're a nightmare. I think our costs are gonna go up. So I'm a little concerned that we have enough money to do, as much as I want to do the other side, I think we better check our numbers first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
agreed.
so sticking with residential, got it. Number 5 is a two-parter. So part 1 is the inspections. So as part of the general conditions through the state, they are going to require, and we recommend, daily on-site inspections. So we need to come to a decision on who is going to be doing those. You've got a couple of options. Gateway could hire someone to the district. You could
We've
third
already
party out.
decided not to do that.
I would make the recommendation that since we just hired our new, what was the word we used?
District manager
In waiting, I'd like to have Chris's opinion on this one. And my opinion is it's either hiring Tetra Tech or we hire an outside vendor. And I don't want to put him in the spot to do it right now. We don't have to make this
Not right
decision
now,
right
yeah.
now. But I'd like to have Chris's input. I agree with what Tyler's saying. That's what I did all my life. I did my own inspection for one reason. If I have you're doing it, I'm putting my reputation and my liability and my certification and license and insurance on the line that your man knows what the hell he's doing. And that is scary. So if we do go with an outside inspector, the risk we run, they're going to have that's outside inspector is going to have to be basically under their supervision. So that they know that what the guy is doing in the field is, one, he's educated enough to know what the hell he's doing, but he's enforcing the specifications such that they can sign off on an SRF loan that it was put in accordance with the plans and specs. But I'd like to have Chris's input on that.
Okay,
TBD, Chris, yes, sir.
so the other part of it is,
The last part is what Ed was talking about earlier
SRF.
with Corbett or somebody like Corbett, someone managing the SRF portion. If you read the recommendation in there, Danny's recommendation is to have him do that. So that's what he is recommending.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
The recommendation from Danny is to have Danny do that work.
My deal on that is real easy. If we're going to go out for an RFP, let Tetra Tech put in a price for that
agree.
work, just like we would have anybody else.
I mean, because if we can secure a good grant manager, that's someone we can continue to use. I mean, they can go out and bird dog grants, you know, on the side. We don't have to pay for it.
And this guy that we talked about, I'm not saying that jump in bed with him right off the bat, but he does have that ability.
Nothing
To
against
do
Danny,
that.
but
Yeah.
I think we're
And-
looking
and
for a
neither do I.
long-term gain here.
Yeah.
That's fine, and I completely understand that. I do just want to tell you, we're talking about starting February 15th.
Yeah.
So you need an RFP like at the January 5th meeting.
Now, again, on that, I think we get back to what we talked about earlier. Does the dollar value come into play to where we have to do that? Is any one of these lakes going to see, what was the number, 325?
You're talking
It's
about.
total project.
You would, in this.
It is a project. Each one of these lakes is a project. They're
These aren't
separate.
engineering services, so,
The contract management services. I'd call
right,
it,
this doesn't
yeah.
qualify under CCNA.
So,
Okay, so then that's the engineering deal?
Yes.
So what
Right.
is the provision or what is the requirement for this position then? Is
This
there
is
a
just
dollar
contract
value?
management. You could bid this if you
No,
want to.
you can, but I mean, there's no mandatory amount, I mean, no amount of which.
So, but my question was, can you do an RFP?
Sure.
So if we just do
You
an
could do it even in
RFP,
a
anybody
formal
can,
one.
we can go out and basically have 3 or 4 of these firms that do it along with Tetra Tech.
Correct.
And get the pricing.
Why don't we do Tetra Tech the first year and give us some time as far as to stay on schedule?
I mean, you could do it either way. Either way, what I would tell you is, or what I recommend to you is, don't go and do some full-blown RFP that you're gonna advertise publicly and all that. Pick a couple of firms.
Oh, yeah.
Get a proposal
Yeah.
from them, and do it informally like Tony just said.
what is Tetra Tech's cost on this? Did you guys put an estimate?
I don't think he put an
I don't
estimate.
think he put an
the,
estimate.
That number there,
And Danny, put a
2520.
dollar amount together, call Corbett and see
Yeah.
what it is, and just compare the two, maybe throw out one more. I mean, do it really,
That would be what I would say to have Chris do. Chris may know 1 or 2 others.
yeah. You don't have to blow it out.
Yeah, but
Anything
tw-
else?
That's it for me, man.
All right.
But as part of this, one thing I forgot to mention in my report, when I saw that the application for the SRF application, we've had some of the discussion before that it's a 20-year amortization, and I had mentioned before that if it matures more than 5 years, it has to be a bond validation. So we had a telephone call, Stephen, I'm not sure if you were on it, and Dave Lapidus and his firm, because he also has an attorney with his firm that is very familiar with SRF. There might need to be a validation of this, file a lawsuit and complaint validation. And that's like a 60 to 90-day period.
That's a court validation?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Of this. And so I was trying to get the authorization to initiate that so I can bring back a complaint by your January 5th meeting so we can file it.
I'm lost. What is this for?
You lost me too. What are you validating?
The borrowing, if it matures more than 5 years, you have to validate it, the CDDs. You have to engage in a circuit court validation process.
Even if it's an SRF loan?
Yes, that's, we had that, I had mentioned that before, that might be a
Why-
possibility when I saw
None of
the,
these other districts are doing this.
well, chapter 190.
Is it specific to CDDs?
Yes,
Okay. So not municipalities, just a CDD?
it's CDDs, Community
The
Development.
Servo didn't say a word about this.
Well, it's in chapter 190. And that's what I had mentioned before, I don't know if you recall, I was saying it a couple of times, depending, when they mentioned what the 20 years was, I said, if it matures in 5, it's okay, but if it's amortized over 20 but matures in 5, it's okay, but if it's more than that, then we have a validation issue.
But what does that keep us from doing?
You couldn't finalize the loan, I guess, right?
I thought the loan's already been finalized.
No,
No,
because
you've
you
made an
have loan
application for
documents
it.
and everything else and closing statements and all that, it would go with the loan, I'm sure.
Okay.
So what do you need from us?
Just authorization to proceed to file the complaint and draft the complaint and file it, and start that process.
Will it be ready tomorrow?
No, but it'll be ready soon.
That's gotta go fast. We can't have that
Yes.
holding us up.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'll make that motion. Tony,
Tyler, you were not on that call, or I thought you were?
I wasn't on that one. Steven, maybe.
this
I mean,
this
the
went
other
over my
Steven,
head.
not
This
that
first
Steven.
I've heard this. I've never even heard anybody, and I've been talking to people all over about it, this SRF, and I've
Danny.
never heard this on
Oh, Danny
CDDs.
Stephen, you were in on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything you want to add to it, or Stephen? or-
Did he do the research? Because I thought he was gonna do some research related to it being a state revolving loan being a little bit different.
Yeah, I've not found, I'll get back with David, but absent that, I just want to get that authorization.
Because the big difference is, I can understand this on a regular loan, where you get the money,
Yeah,
and
this
it's
is
in a
revolving loan,
bank.
see, that's what I was
This is a reimbursement program, totally
I don't
different than a
disagree with you,
bond.
But I think what Tony's saying is he wants authorization if the research comes back
Is
saying that.
Saying that, okay.
Just to make sure, 'cause once
Make sure.
again, because
Okay.
it's a revolving loan, so that's what might be a little bit different.
I'll make that motion if it requires a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And there were some documents that had to be sent to SRF, and those got sent? Those were received?
December 7th, I believe, correct, Tyler?
Yes, sir. Those
Okay.
were sent.
Did we need
Just wanna
to
make sure.
approve a new designated representative resolution such that Margaret can be signatory?
I don't think it was in
Yeah,
the
we-
application, right? No.
I don't think so.
For the application, your
Did you see the
resolution
application?
did that when we appointed the officers.
Okay, okay.
I think the application just says that. the
Typically, they
district
just have
chairman-
one
Yeah.
person that's a signatory, that's what they call the designated representative.
Through the application, we did that.
Okay, okay. Just want to make sure we didn't have that messed up.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tyler.
Operations Managers Report, 6C.
Any specific questions?
I don't have any. Does anyone have any specific questions of the?
We did have a birth of an address today. The fun part got an address today.
Oh, okay.
And that was very important. Lee County Sheriff's Office had suggested that because in the event that there's a 911 call or when they get called out, now there's an address associated with it and it can be tracked in their system better and we can go back and look at their collected data for the park.
Kathy has a question.
Yes.
Okay, update on the Fairlanks lighting?
Oh, did everybody, thank you. Did you receive the letter that's from the POA, I believe? Did you guys receive that letter?
Yes.
Where they're basically asking you to just take over the road?
I think we have an issue here, people. The research I have done, that goes back to Johnson Engineering and the original Gateway, bite my tongue, I have to say this, but Fairway Lakes Office Park, 16 lights were part of the original base plan of Gateway, just like the lights in Gateway Greens on Gateway Greens Drive and West Links. As much as I don't like it, I think that those lights should be ours.
Terry says he's,
They weren't.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have all the facts, Bill.
What facts do you have?
I have a map that April has that shows the original setup of Gateway, the original lights.
Can we bring this back so
What-
that we all have the documentation that he's
it's,
talking about?
they're
that's-
scheduled to be turned off December 9th. So they may already be off.
Well,
I think it was December 9th.
all I'm just trying to bring up is what I have been able to discover. But you do bring up another point, and this is one that ticks me off, is that WCI allowed the POA for that area to just arbitrarily dissolve. I think that we need to take and force that area to recreate a POA because they got a road over there. And the last thing I want to do is the rest of us get stuck for it. WCI is going to be gone. Those 6 roads, we got them to pay for, and we agreed to take them over. But at least they bore the cost of the capital improvements. This dude here is hanging around here just waiting to bite us. Let's get them to create that POA back that they dissolved. And then if the lighting comes up, we'll just tell them their POA if I'm found to be wrong. But I'm just trying to pass on to you the document I saw from Johnson Engineering that goes back to the late 80s shows the lighting of Gateway CDD, and those 16 lights
That
were on
Commerce
it.
Lake area that we're talking
No,
about?
not Commerce Lake, Fairway Lake.
Fairway.
Fairway Lake.
Well, you know, we didn't make that decision just on the,
I don't think we did the research, Bill. That's all I'm bringing up.
If
Send what
there's
you have.
more
I don't like it
information-
either, but I just
Well, I
am
think
trying
the
to tell what I
decision-
saw.
Can you send
The
me what you
decision at
have?
the time was,
It's in there on it's
We
a
don't-
map, right in there around the corner on the wall.
we don't own them,
Right.
we're not paying for them, make them
Correct.
pay for it. Now,
Right.
if they say, okay, we'd much rather you take over, now that's a little different conversation. Now we need to
Or we-
determine whether we want them or not.
Or we could go the other way and do what we're doing and then be prepared that if they come back and file some objection, like that drawing that I saw, then we change our mind.
Okay.
Yep.
But as of now, they've been scheduled for turn off. So they're probably off.
Okay.
That's the only question I had for April. Oh, April 1. Is
I
page,
don't think Kathy was.
oh, I'm
finished,
sorry.
Actually,
That was the only thing you had, okay, sorry. Ann.
Page 1,
So am I doing anything, am I communicating with WCI? Am I asking them to recreate this POA?
Well,
no,
Not
I
at
think
this-
the WCI is out of it. I think you have to go to those, the
they
people
have to
that
do
own
themselves.
over there.
They have to voluntarily agree to
Yes.
adopt
At
covenants.
At this time, we're
There's-
just gonna let it ride.
Okay.
Yeah. On page 1, I think this is yours, April, page 151, line item 31, and I don't want to go through any more on this, but just this. I did not understand the King's English on this. Net CIP transfer, in parentheses, fixed asset reserves,
Yeah.
and those dollars, what the
Mr.
dickens
Tingle,
is
that's
that?
actually mine. I mean, April can talk
Sorry.
on it if she wants.
I'm
but
sorry,
that's my
sorry.
item.
I didn't have anything else for April's.
Anything about the website? The website's moving right along. We've got a development site, and so now we can see some things. Diane's been working really, really hard, and she loaded them up with a bunch of content that they were loading this week, so they didn't even need our weekly meeting Monday at 2 because he had so much work that he was loading on the new website.
You do have an item, Sports Complex 16, on the lighting. Was the board aware that you all approved to Bentley Electric? I just found out about this within the last 2 weeks. What appears to be, because they're hard to read, purchase orders to Bentley Electric totaling about $160,000 for the sports complex.
Yes, that was board approved.
Those, well, I'm talking to Charles Bentley, and then what raised the question is, we have 400,000 in the capital reserve, 80,000 for 5 straight years. My question is why? He says that the improvements we're gonna do for that $150,000 will last us 9 to 10 years. So why do we have 400,000 in our capital reserve budget to change the lights?
Well, it's a phase-in. I think we've been doing $79,000 a
Yeah, but
year.
my question is, if it's not needed until 2026, why do we care?
Oh, well, we haven't finished the upgrade of them yet.
Right.
We've been upgrading field by field, I believe, couple fields at
That
a
wasn't my
time.
point. He says the 150,000 that he's already been contracted, when he finishes that, you will have 9 years of life out of those lights. So why do we need to be budgeting 80,000, 79,000 a year right now?
That's only for 1 or 2 fields.
Right.
I'm just going by what Bentley told me.
Well, and I think probably the budget for the 5-year plan was probably designed before we contracted with those 2 POs, and now
That
each
is
year
exact-
you have to revisit that.
That's
It was,
exactly what
but-
I think the answer is.
But originally, that wasn't the number that was given, the 150, it was 75 it would take.
That's
That's why we
correct.
split it,
Right.
because it was so much larger. but
With the 2
apparently-
purchase orders I saw, Steve, I could hardly read them, but that's what it looked
Yeah.
like, it was
I
about
mean,
150,000.
If that's the case, then that'll be part of our adjustment as we
Okay,
go forward.
okay. That's it.
Anything else?
I'm good, Rob.
I don't think so. You don't have any supervisor comments?
No, I certainly
Okay.
do not.
All right.
Well, hold it, when's Stephen going?
Am I up?
You're
Well,
up.
I was gonna ask for permission to defer this to the next meeting, but it's up to you guys. This is the 2016 water and sewer sufficiency analysis that we do. All that's required of us is to do 2016 to ensure that we have sufficient funds to cover our debt. We've done that. In addition to that, what I like to do as a part of just kind of taking a look at rates and how things are moving forward is I always add another 4 years as kind of an initial cash flow for the utility fund. So that's really what this is. And what I have done is I have built off of what Mr. Burton did when he originally did the utility rate study. I used a very similar approach to what he did, probably a lot more conservative than he was on growth. He had a lot more growth occurring. You know, I was very conservative on certain places that he was not. And I could take you through each of these schedules, but you know, kind of at a
Let's go for
bottom
it.
line approach first. And I think this was a page that Mr. Tinker was talking about earlier. When you get all the way down and look at, it's 151, I believe, and you look at row 36, that was kind of the number that I was looking to see. And basically what that cash flow surplus deficit is telling us on an annual basis, and that each number is an annual amount that you would have, is how is the utility fund going to do over the next couple years to be able to cover some of the infrastructure ideas that we've been talking about.
What happened in 17 that took a 1 million surplus down to 390 negative?
Office.
What project?
That's the office enhancement.
Oh, the 800,000?
Yes, yeah. And that's to answer your
Yeah, but
question
that's a
about
lot more
line
than
30.
800,000, that's 1.4 million.
Well, that's a portion of it, that's only one piece of it.
Okay.
Remember, it gets split between the general fund and the utility fund.
Okay.
But that's what row 31 is it takes into account the projects. And if you see, you know, row 31, there's not a whole lot of projects that we have right now versus what we've been talking about. So really kind of the bottom line of this kind of exercise was to certainly show that we really need our rate study
Yes.
And this proves it out. Because in fact, the rates, the last rate increase we have on the books is January 1 of 2018. And in order to get these numbers, I had to keep going with the rate increase just to get to these numbers. So that you're not in dire straits, you're not hurting for cash, you still have your working capital, you still have everything good. But when we start talking about your rehabilitating infrastructure on a major level, which we know we need to do, you would not have the sufficient capital based on your current rates. That's kind of what this is showing you.
Well, this is why Chris and I have been looking at projections, one, to satisfy the contract with Lee County, but looking at all of our deals and doing maybe a 5-year projection of seeing what we've got coming in.
Sure.
In the way of ERUs, and then figuring out a good example is our connection fee, $17.97. We take that connection fee up to where the average is, 4,000 or 5,000, and you have 1,000 units coming in, you just brought in $3 million of reserve.
Well, and again, I kept the connection fees very low. In 2016, you had $730,000 worth of connection fees.
At $17.97.
But from this projection forward, I took it down because, again, you certainly are going to have the connection fees, but you can't build a business plan with hoping for connection fees year after year.
You could have an accurate projection.
Right. So,
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of conservative numbers in here. There's nothing dire in here. It's just an exercise we do to kind of start showing us, to prove out where we need our utility study and kind of what's going on, and obviously making sure we have plenty to cover our debt service, which we do.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else have any questions for him? Okay. Chris, thank you for staying.
I'll make this quick. I covered the irrigation system report, Chris Shoemaker, utility manager, that we're working on, and it'll be a work in progress. So the TICO line's progressing. They lost a bit one day and we're down for a few days, but they're at Gateway Greens right now. And the rest of the projects are moving along. Pond 104, we're looking at getting started in January. And we're also replacing a couple pumps in a couple of our irrigation wells that are old and decrepit and not working, so.
Any questions for Chris?
And I'll say the only place that we probably fell down is when we had some issues with the irrigation system. We could have done a better job at communicating that to the property owner association, the HOAs, and we revised a data set for them and a little announcement so we can blast that out to them if it happens again.
Excellent.
And hopefully
Thank
we
you.
won't have to.
Hopefully. All right, that brings us to supervisor comments. Doug?
No, I'm good.
Kathy?
Yes,
Okay.
okay. I have a whole list, but I'm gonna only ask one thing.
I was gonna say, narrow it down, please.
Since the board eliminated the landscaping committee, and Mainscape was always at landscaping committee so that we could talk to them about what's going on and what needed to be done, I would like a request to have Mainscape at least once a month at one of our meetings.
Or at least to provide a,
Well, it's
Would you rather
better-
meet with them?
I would prefer them being here so they can publicly, like when we had the landscaping committee, publicly give us answers. And the next time if the work wasn't done, which it wasn't, we could approach them again. So anything that I get from residents about things that are going on Gateway, I would like to address them.
And what are you doing with that information today? Do you send it over to April or?
Actually, today I have no one that called me.
Okay. No, I mean, in general, like if someone comes, what if,
I go to L.
you go to, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Ed?
I have a lot, but not tonight.
Thank you. I think I have, there was one thing that I did miss, and that was, and I missed this because I didn't make myself a note, and it's unfortunate. I'm going back to the minutes, it's page 6, and there's a reference to Scott Connell, but I'm doubting that Scott Connell is who this should have been referenced to. I meant to bring that up.
Whereabouts?
Page 6 of the minutes, it's line 201. Mr. Pierce noted he is working with Scott Connell on this item. That was in November, so I doubt that.
Oh, no, that's he's helping the developer in the
Okay.
transfer.
All right,
Yeah.
just wanted to
John
verify
Nagy
that.
and Scott Connell are working on that, yes, good
Okay,
catch though.
just wanted to verify that. And on, quickly.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you for the card, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and here's the.
Yes, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone. And we are
See you-
adjourned.
See you at 3.
Here, and I'll show you this real quick. This is,
Bill
when
left
we,
his
when we
card.
had David Peters on the phone, we had someone who's,
Big stack of papers.
very knowledgeable on SRF loans. He does it all the time.
Yeah, I know.
She talks about sometimes
Started
they'll agree to
recording
fund
it.
it.
What are you reading in there?
This is 190.
I don't know.
This is
I don't know when it
definition of
stopped.
bonds
You
into
told me it was
loans and
having
notes,
problems.
any kind of borrowing. And you scroll all the way down, this is a holdover from some of
But I
the
recorded
initial
the rest
days
of
of
it here.
CDs.
See, we had the same issue up north, but we